Welcome. Today, I'd like to talk about seemings. I found that initially when I was reorienting from the belief in things being separate objects and me being a separate, limited character with problems that needed to be fixed. Um, I this or reorienting, which was apparently a gradual process, even though, it can be said there is no time, but it appeared as a gradual process. And what I found most useful was this notion of that everything is a seeming. This seems to be a vest. This seems to be a chair. This seems to be a person. It's not denying anything. It's just the idea of holding whatever thought is declaring anything to be, just holding it more lightly. That to me was the beginning of just loosening all the ideas of what anything is and what I am. So in this flowing of seemings, I can say, well, you know, that seems to be what you think, or that seems to be a disagreement. There's less clinging to the identity of what I believe anything is. Now, it doesn't mean that, I might not have strong opinions. I mean, reactions can arise. Everything arises. I mean, that's the beauty here. Everything that appears is an appearance and it comes and goes. So, despite that we were taught that everything is stable, that everything is concrete, I mean, we were just taught that, when we learn language. I keep coming back to that because this is the key, is just the recognition that the stability that we were programmed to believe this is just, check it out for yourself. See how everything just flows into the next appearance. It seems static, it may seem stable, but it's just how we learn to perceive. So, you know, that's the investigation, that's the exploration. Uh, Yesterday I asked on a my Facebook friends, do what questions might you be curious about? And this one is just, I think it's just perfect because I so relate to it myself. Um, and the question was, when you observe an inner reaction wanting to jump out, we've all had that. Um, and then the question is, how do you keep yourself reacting from ego instead of responding from the self? That's a great question. And I have to point out the perspective. The question is from the perspective of separate things. And this is the reorienting that I'm talking about, is that we've been programmed to orient to separate things. There's a this and a that, and a me and a you and a circumstance and whatever. Yes, they seem to appear. So again, no denying anything. It seems to appear, but the amazing thing about appearance, they it just comes and goes. One moment in appearance, then poof. So um, it's the coming and going that can begin to help, again, loosen the way we hold things to be. So with that question, how do you hold your keep yourself from reacting from ego instead of responding from the self? Did I say that backwards? Instead of responding from the self. So again, perspective. Ego is a construct. It's imagined. Uh, I love when I read, ego has to die. Uh, and then I say, tongue in cheek, well, how does anything have to die that doesn't actually exist? I mean, where is ego? Can you find it? You know, um, I know what it means. I study psychology, but it's a construct. And all it's doing is pointing to uh, our conditioning, you know, and we can survive quite well without that belief system uh, continuing to be clung to. I can still go grocery shopping. I can still drive my car. I can still, carry on a conversation to whatever degree, with a friend without imagining that there is an ego doing this stuff. I mean, again, investigate, see how everything is simply unfolding. Uh, like I mentioned in one of my clips from the other day, where is the doer who threw the leg over the bed to get up in the morning? It just couldn't be found, you know. Uh, Thought, ego, whatever you want to call they're just names. Um, you know, declared that it did it, it decided, but you know, that's just what thought does, and it will always do that after the fact, wanting to, uh, take credit. So, pardon me, I know that I kind of digress. I digress because there's nobody here to, keep me in check. But so how do you keep yourself from reacting from ego instead of responding from self? So, I, if there's no ego, then what is the self? I mean, that must be a thing that we imagine is here too. And, I'm not trying to say that any other perspectives are incorrect or inaccurate, but can you find these things that you're pointing to? Or do you start to notice that everything is a flow of experience? Everything that we call anything is simply a flow of experiencing. So, let's just say I'm having a conversation, somebody says something that, evokes either a disagreement or an annoyance, whatever. Um, so it depends. That can be seen in the moment, like poof, there it is. There's this sensation here, this tension. There's an awareness of this so-called tension, and there can be a pause. There can be a breath, and there can be an instantaneous relaxation. Or there can be a reaction. There can be a disagreement. No, wait a minute. What are you talking about? It's all simply arising. No one is doing anything. There's no uh, intention of anything. That's the remarkableness of this flow of experiencing. It's just like a river. The river isn't intending to do anything. It's not intending to go around the boulder or splashing over a stick. It's just all doing it. So, from this human perspective, however, noticing is great. There can be a noticing in a moment, and although there's no doer, there is what I like to call participation. And so, with this noticing that can seem to become more refined, more aware of, uh, there can be a pause, there can be a breath, there can be, something other than a reaction that might have occurred that didn't. So that's the beauty of noticing. And then, of course, this brings us into the question of better or not as good, which was one of my favorite dilemmas that I always thought some other response was better, and I should be doing that instead of doing what this reaction is. The better or not as good is more thought, spinning, judging, comparing, evaluating, which is fine, but it's kind of tiring. And I'll tell you, it's much more freeing to be just in the flow of whatever is arising. And so without the judging, there's just noticing and the flow. I mean, and they're not separate. It kind of sounds like that. Without the hierarchy of better or not as good, ego, higher self. I mean, you know, I'm not saying that those are accurate or inaccurate. I'm just saying it's a perspective, and the perspective I'm offering it simply is not arranging anything in a hierarchical uh, ladder, so to speak. And it can just be noticed that this flow of experience is what's happening. And so without the hierarchy, there's less judgment. I don't think that just, you know, creates more chaos and, oh, I guess that I can just act any old way. I guess I doesn't matter how I act. I mean, well, that's a perspective too, but it depends on one's nature. So, if one's nature is, um, I don't even know what to label it, but you know what I mean. It's not like this character is going to fall apart and behave poorly. So, just reevaluate, just play with these different perspectives and see what's actually happening, what's actually here. And that if some reaction occurs that, seems less than loving, um, you know, it just was an appearance. And, you could just apologize. You could just say, oops, you know, didn't mean that, or you recognize it afterwards. The freedom is that there's no character doing any of this, and there's no hierarchy, and this does not have to devolve into chaos. And it's also occurring to me that holding it that way, that, uh, I said something wrong or ego, that's still characterizing the whole thing as a character in a story who's doing something wrong. And I think that's the main point that I'm wanting to try to convey, however sloppily, is that what's here is simply this unending flow of experiencing that can appear like this person, that person. Uh, these are all what appears in this field of experience. It can appear like an agreement or a disagreement, but these are all the ways we label things. And in this reorienting, it can be recognized that simply what's here is the flow of experiencing. It can look like anything. I mean, it can look like, you know, a beautiful flow of loving conversation. It can look like um, a big fight, an argument. I mean, it can look like anything, uh, and it can feel like anything, but it's so much more than what thought labels things or characterizes things to be. And this is what is being pointed to. So, this is what can be explored. And then there was a comment that I read on someone's Facebook post, and I'll read that. They didn't ask me anything, but I was touched by it and I wanted to respond to it here. So what was written is a thought appears and suddenly there's someone inside it. With every attempt to resolve it, the illusion is quietly maintained of a divided self, a perfect or a flawed me. You know, I remember those, holding reality that way. Um, a thought appears and suddenly there's someone inside it. Well, again, this is the beauty of noticing. A thought appears, suddenly there's someone inside it. Well, go notice. So the minute that thought, and now there's someone inside the thought, poof, it's gone. It's totally gone. That thought is gone. Who knows? Maybe suddenly an itch appeared. So now there's an itch, and then there's scratching, or the wind blew, and the hair got ruffled. I mean, every instant is changing. Sometimes it's more pronounced, sometimes it's so subtle you don't even notice. And then with every attempt to resolve it, the illusion is quietly maintained. Now, again, I'm going to ask you, how is it possible that the illusion is maintained? I mean, I understand that intellectually because, I can tell you from earlier times that the illusion of this limited me was maintained. That was a belief because nothing can be maintained. I mean, how long can you hold your breath? How long can you stare at an object? What can be maintained? Uh, you think you're maintaining silence, and all of a sudden a dog barks. I mean, what can be maintained? It to me, that's like an impossibility, but it's an idea. And thought comes up with all these ideas and then insists that it's true. So, and let me see. The idea is quietly maintained of a divided self, a perfect or flawed me. Okay, and so even that is an idea, a divided self, a perfect me, a flawed me. How long does that last? So I can be sitting there thinking about this flawed me, and then all of a sudden I smell um, some cooking. And wow, and then all of a sudden a thought comes, man, I'm kind of hungry. Or, oh, wouldn't a nice cup of coffee be great right now? Or, um, the phone rings. Everything is a flow. Nothing is static. Only thought wants to make it seem to be so. So once again, the beauty is noticing, noticing what a thought is declaring to be true and questioning it, just like the bird pecking a few feet away. There it was. But then there was also in that moment the noticing the thought, noticing the concept of bird, noticing the idea of pecking, and noticing the belief in a few feet away. When that begins to be questioned, not that it's right or wrong, but when those concepts begin to be questioned, the whole way we begin to hold reality just starts to loosen. It doesn't slip away, but it loosens. And and I can't describe that. I mean, that is something that really needs to be one's own direct experience and, be your own scientist. Find these things out just in any given moment. Life experiencing will show you what it is. Thanks so much for your attention and for playing with your own experience.